Hi YouTubers, I'm going to show you my collection of Tinplate Army trains. And this is a Marx Army supply train. It's the engine, which is a Canadian Pacific shell. And generally, if it were not an Army train, they would call it a 3000. And this is, as you can see, is 500. And all this is a decal that the factory put on. Single reduction electric motor. And what they have done right down here is they've added a lot more weights for traction. And it's basically a lead weight that fits into the area of the motor that attaches to the shell. And it works rather well. And here's our tender Army supply train number 500. This is all original. And this is our field gun. And the field gun rotates. And as you can see, it has a shield in front of it to protect the people that are using it from being shot. I'm not sure you can see it. There's a little tiny crank right there. And a child playing with that would rotate that crank, and there is a tiny little, I'm using tiny little a lot. There's a tiny little leaf spring in here, and when you crank that, there's a gear wheel, and it hits the leaf spring and goes clack, 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 and sounds like a machine gun, or which to me wouldn't be correct because that is not a machine gun, but to a kid it'd be a lot of fun. And this is my tank car and tank. Marx made several of these cars. This tank is a reproduction that I found on eBay, and the tank and the car itself were only $40. So these things go for $200 and more. And this is the correct decal for the side. Some of them did not have decals, and you saw a lot of tab and slots on the sides, and you had painting on the top. This is just simply painted olive drab green, and they also had the faces of two soldiers on top, which was a deluxe model and will cost you a pretty penny. I simply run this on the train. I'm not 8 years old. I don't need to lay on the floor and play with my toys anymore. So this was very practical for me. And cheap. And I'm a cheap guy. Now this is one of the other tanks that they had, which is called the rollover tank. And as you can see, this is a little worse for the wear, and there's a piece under here that you can see would come down and push the tank upside down, and it would roll over and right itself. So boy, that would have been a lot of fun if I'd had one of those as a kid. And it probably would have looked as bad as it does now if I'd been playing with it. And most of them are numbered number 5. They made a special car to carry this. I find these highly impractical because they have this key that will not unscrew. And on most of the Marx engines, I found the keys will unscrew. So if you're going through tunnels and bridges and such, you're not going to derail the train. And this key just hangs out too much. I've seen people try to run them on their layouts and derail the trains, which these things are just too old and too valuable. You don't need to be wrecking them. Let me get this tank out of the way. Love this tank. They not sure what they cost. You can pay up to $100 if you want on a really nice one. And I got it for about 20 bucks in a junk store. And this is the Marx anti-aircraft gun. This too revolves or turns around freely. You'll see this big thing up here. That is a spring-loaded lever that the child and I have tried it. It works. You pull it back, fit it into this slot, and put one of the Marx wooden bullets in there. And your mother runs into the room and says, "You're going to put your eye out." But it will shoot. It shoots pretty good. It'll shoot the. I used a pencil in there, and I don't recommend that. And shot the pencil just to see how it worked, and it worked rather well. So let's move the train up again. And this is the Marx Spotlight car. Just like all their other cars, all their other Spotlight cars, you can turn it around to move the spotlight. It'll turn around all the way. What happens with these is this one, the old wire has broken, and I haven't got around to replacing it, and I had to remove the pickups on the bottom for the third rail because it was shorting against the inside of the car. So let's see. It's fine. I'll fix it eventually, one of these days. This is one of my favorites. This is what they call the siege gun. And I love the fact that it's on 8 wheels instead of 4 because this thing looks so heavy and it's so huge. It also has the ability to turn freely up and down. And this part you can pull back and turn slightly like the anti-aircraft gun, get it to lock, and put one of the Marx shells in there and fire it. So a lot of play value. And once again, a lot of mothers yelling, "You're going to put your eye out." Reminds me of the Christmas story with the little boy with the BB gun. Wanted the Red Ryder BB gun. Okay. This one is the radio car. It's marked Army Supply Train radio car, and you can see lots of people in there reading their papers, smoking their cigarettes and their pipes, and very interesting graphics, wonderful litho. There are 2 sets of wires, I would call them, and they're about the size of what the handrails for the engines that run across the top lengthwise. And you'll see an antenna on there which is not original. Marx had a very large square antenna that set on one end. And once again, if you've got a low bridge or low tunnel, it's gonna fall off. I just simply pulled mine out. You have the ability of simply pulling these out and removing them. And I went out in the garage and found some wire, and most of the old antennas that I've seen that they were using during World War II were round. And although this was pre-World War II, this was 1939 to 40, and I thought, I'm just going to make this round. So I formed this around a screwdriver and got it perfectly round, and with a length to that actually touches the bottom of the car. Pull this camera back. It actually touches down there so it stays stable, and that's fine with me. And finally, we have our official car, which is basically like an observation car. You've got your observation deck on the back. This is the unlighted version, and you don't want to have a light on the back of a military train. You know, the airplane's going to come along and see it and shoot at it at night. There's some cars missing from this set. This is actually, they came out with so many sets. This would be like a deluxe set here. But the rarest you could ever find would have a truck on it. It could be a dump truck, or it could be a covered truck. Would have been, the covered trucks were flat on the ends. And of course, this is not from a military set. This is from a Canadian Pacific work set. But if you had your covered truck, it would have been like the Army trucks with a covered wagon cover. And the covers were made out of cardboard, so obviously most of them have been lost over the years or have turned to crap. And they were olive drab, as the truck would have been. And they were stamped with silver paint, and they would have said U.S. Army on them. And they will cost you a pretty penny. Very rare, very hard to find, and very expensive. So what I am missing, and I'm in no hurry to find it, is the ordnance car, which is a gondola with litho on it. That very nice litho, and it says, I believe it says Army Ordnance Car or Ordnance Car, and inside would be all your wooden shells for your guns here, your big cannons, and sometimes sandbags. Just depends on what set you bought and what the loads are. And let me see. Let me think really hard. Oh, yes. They had a machine gun car. And the machine gun car would have looked something like this. You would have had four or two, I'm not sure if it was 4 legs or 2 large legs to hold it down. And you had the machine gun, and I don't know if it turned. I've never had one in my hand, or if it tilted. And you would also have the shells, which were just on a strip of metal and painted. It looked like it was your strip of shells to be shot out of the machine gun. So this is the whole set, and I really don't know of anything that had any more play value. It certainly had as much play value as the Lionel sets did, Army sets that had shooting rockets and such during the 60s and 70s, except for the fact that these lasted longer. This set is, I'm 68, and this set is 10 years older than me. So, figure 78 years old, and look how great these cars are. And other than the tank car, which the guy made, I have not painted any of these cars. Now, in the 1990s, a company came out and bought the rights to reproduce and use the Marx name, and they also bought the dies and the equipment, stamping equipment to reproduce Marx cars. This is a Thor army train. Very difficult to find, and if you find this particular piece, it's going to be extremely expensive. I got it when the market was bad and people were selling everything off. And I absolutely love the litho on here with the cannons coming out. And of course Thor was the god of thunder, so here's the lightning. And love the name Thor. It's also called X99 car. And what they did is they simply took the piece for the extended roof of the caboose and added cannons to it. These cannons do not move. This doesn't turn around. Then you had your United States Army Bureau of Ordnance, which of course means bullets and shells and guns. And they made a very, very nice car. And you'll notice this is on trucks, four-wheel trucks. And the door opens. Both doors open. They did a great job of lithography. And like I said, these are all from the 1990s. These are not old Marx trains. And this is your fuel oil car. U.S. Army Supply Depot. U.S. AX number 4165. And I think they did a very good job with this too. I should have mentioned on the ordnance car, they made two that I know of. This is a 4161. They also made a 4171. And then you have your Marx Military Corps Troop Barracks, number 4172, USA. Once again, great job of lithography. Really outdid themselves. And at the very end is a pleasant surprise. This is their caboose. And well, I'd call it a caboose, but it's an armored car. So I think, well, it's guarding the back of the train. And like the Thor locomotive, it's X999. Special Military Tactical Forces, USA, with a star. Once again, the lightning symbols and the lithography, cannons coming out the side, and you can see on the roof more lithography. That's the old Marx. I think it's the Marx. It's some kind of a symbol up there. There's another star. And this came in four wheels. And they also made them in 8 wheels with trucks. And this happened to be the one that I found. And I felt very lucky to find it. I have seen another version. I should mention first that they took the extended roof of the caboose and added cannons to it, except they moved it towards the end of the car. Then they took the two more extended roofs, put them on the side of the cars, and these are slots to shoot out of. These aren't holes, they're actually painted on there. So this is a very cool train. If you can find all these pieces. I noticed lately on eBay that they're selling a lot of the pieces. I haven't seen the caboose, and I have not seen this Thor locomotive. So you'll be lucky to find one. Let's see. Up above, I have the Lionel. And this is a reissue of a set that was made in 1918 during World War I. And this is a one-way open frame motor with spoke wheels, just like the original. The turn will turn. If you turn it, you will scratch the paint. There's a screw on top to hold it on, and so I screw it tight so it doesn't scratch the paint and turn around. It actually has two cannons, and I think I'm going to stand up. I'm sitting in my office chair, and excuse me for the moving the camera around, and give you a really good view of this. There we go. Now you can see the two cannons and the screw on top and the little vents on the side. And let's take a look at the front. Little vents on the front. If I saw this thing coming, I would certainly want to get out of its way. And what they did with this reissue is they made two little box cars, which I assume would be ordnance cars. And originally they had two 702 supply cars, which were simply what Lionel was making at the time. They had two big windows on the side and openings on the ends for doors, and they simply painted them either green or gray. These sets come in both colors, and use what they had, which I gotta respect. That's what Marx has done for years, use what they had. These doors slide open. The mill of metal is extremely thin, and so handle with care. Find the couplers to be somewhat funky. I had to mess with them to get them to work right. They flop around a bit. So here's the second ordnance car. And here's a surprise car. This did not come with this set. This is a Marx flat that was made for an airplane. And it's got slots down here to hold the airplane wheels. And where they cut the slots out, they bent the metal up to hold the airplane, keep it from flopping around. And some guy sold this on eBay and painted it army green and found this Britain's cannon, which is a howitzer, and it's also a working cannon. You can see the big kind of I'd call it a wire. You pull it back and then you lock it. And let's see, let me hold the camera better. You pull this back, lock it, and put something like, it'd be smaller than a BB in there, And once again, you're going to put your eye out. And all the fellow did was attach it to the original Marx hole that was in here. You'll see the hole up here too. And I think it looks great. Somebody really had a great idea. And I think this Lionel train with just the armored vehicle, as they call it, the armored car. I'm going to sit down again. The armored car and the two box cars is kind of boring and really needs that howitzer on the back. It completes the set. So this is, of course, I believe they still may be making them now. I try to avoid buying anything from China. And I bought this. This is made in China. The locomotive or armored locomotive is an exact copy of the one made in 1918. And they'll cost, if you can find one, they're going to be all banged up, and they're going to cost you at least $1,000. And this one sells for around, I believe, $400 new. Someone was selling it on eBay for $220 because it had a nasty scratch on the side of the locomotive. And I'm good with detailing. I used to restore jukeboxes, and old jukeboxes, played 78s and 45s. So I match the paint, and now I can't even see where I touched it up, but it did have a nasty scratch. So I got a good deal on it, or I wouldn't have bought it in the first place. Always wanted this set, thought it looked very cool, but I really love it with it. I'm repeating myself, I really love it with a howitzer on the back. It needed something extra. So these are my military sets. Pull the camera back. And I really don't have a favorite. They're really all very cool. Love how Marx painted these, or lithographed these little rivets on there. And show you the old Marx train again. Military train. Let's get the dump truck out of the way. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching. And once again, this has been a Big Lizard production. Bye-bye.